This is Badgers in 60.
Cloud picks it up, finds Gilmore down the lane, slam dunk. An overtime winner for Christian Fitzgerald, 6'5" Badgers.
Time to talk about your Wisconsin Badgers.
Klesman open three, right side, nailed it. Douglas, extra pass to the corner, how about Leitzinger? Yes, and Wisconsin has a 6-point lead.
With Dave Gasper and Nick Bruesewitz, here is Hunter Baumgardt.
Welcome to the debut edition of Badgers in 60 here on 97.3 The Game in Milwaukee and 1070 The Game in Madison. I am Hunter Baumgardt alongside Dave Gasper and Nick Bruesewitz, and we are going to get into so much Badgers talk tonight coming up. Looking forward to talking with the legendary Hall of Fame broadcaster Paul Brown coming up at 6:20 to talk about him coming back to the mic and calling women's hockey for the Badgers. That's coming up in about 20 minutes or so. We'll, of course, get into the 6th-ranked Badger men's basketball team and the hot streak that they're on. We'll get into hockey as well. All of that coming up, guys. But first, when the Packers make a hiring, we have one guy to call, right? That is Matt Schneidman. And he was nice enough to join us on short notice. So Matt's going to join us right out of the gates here. We're going to talk a little Packers, and then we'll get right into Badgers. So don't you worry. But Matt Schneidman of The Athletic joins us. Of course, he hosted this time slot all during the football season. And Matt, welcome back to your time slot in a guest capacity.
You just couldn't let us have it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Welcome back. Now, initial thoughts about a half an hour after Jeff Hafley, the head coach of the Boston College football team, has been hired as the defensive coordinator in Green Bay.
Yeah, I thought I was going to have a little bit of a break here at 6 p.m. every night, but that lasted about 2 days. This one came out of left field, didn't it? Because there were, 6 names reported that were either requested for interviews for this position or interviewed for the position. And Jeff Hafley was not one of them. So the Packers and whoever was involved in this clearly kept it under wraps. But look, he doesn't come to the Packers without any NFL experience. He was an NFL DB coach for 6 years, from 2013 to 2018 with the Buccaneers, the Browns for 2 years when Mike Pettin was the head coach there, and then for 3 years with the 49ers. Then in 2019, he was a really solid DB coach and co-defensive coordinator, I should say, at Ohio State. And after that 2019 season, when Hafley was in charge of the Ohio State defense, at least partially, Chase Young was the number 2 pick, Jeff Okudah was the number 3 pick, and Damon Arnett, a corner, was the number 19 pick. So he helped put 3 guys from that defense in the top 20. And then the last 4 years, kind of a mediocre 4 years at Boston College as the head coach. But yes, I'm definitely surprised, but we'll see if this works out for the Packers because Matt LaFleur needs to get this one right.
Well, yeah, absolutely, Matt. And coming out, we've seen some comments from Jeff Hafley coming out where really for him, it's about getting back to coaching football and kind of getting out of the college game where it's all taken over by NIL and recruiting and trying to just keep the team together and not as much about coaching football. So for him, it seems like getting back into the NFL is more about getting back strictly to coaching football. It seems like this is something that we've seen a lot of college coaches dealing with, getting out of the college game and going to the NFL or retiring because of NIL and how crazy the college game is.
Yeah, I saw that from Pete Thamel when he kind of added that to the report. That was interesting. It seems like this guy is done with all the surrounding stuff with college football and just wants to coach football, which, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but his expertise is in defensive backs. And that's an area where the Packers could get better. I mean, he's coming into a room that has one of the best corners in the league in Jair Alexander. Now, the rest of the room is a question mark because does Carrington Valentine hold on to a starting spot, entering his second year in the league after what he did this year? Keyshawn Nixon's a free agent. Darnell Savage, Jonathan Owens, and Rudy Ford are all unrestricted free agents, or at least set to be. Then Eric Stokes' future is uncertain. Obviously, he's been injured for the last 2 years, pretty much. Do they go corner in the first round? And do they try and make that kind of a strength of this defense under Jeff Hafley? I'll be intrigued to see, but I did find those comments that Pete Thamel relayed along pretty interesting.
Matt, when we look at the candidates that were listed, that were set to be interviewed or were interviewed, they all seem to be younger, up-and-coming options, and Hafley fits that bill, but his head coaching experience, do you think that would suggest that he could have an opportunity to just get the defense and run that side of the ball, and LaFleur kind of focuses back to offense only?
Yeah, that was one of the questions from this season, was how much input did LaFleur really have in the defense toward the end of the season, when he kind of said publicly that he would try and have more of a hand in it. I don't know how much more LaFleur, trusts Jeff Hafley to run a defense than Joe Barry. Clearly some, because he fired one guy and hired the other. But, I would anticipate LaFleur letting Jeff Hafley kind of put his imprint on this defense. I'm really intrigued to see kind of what style he plays. He's obviously been in, a bunch of different, teams and organizations over the last decade. Is it going to be the same kind of bend but don't break, keep everything in front that Joe Barry ran? Is it going to be something different? I'm really intrigued to kind of dig into this guy's background and hopefully provide the listeners and readers more insight into this guy that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere is right. Mitch and I have been joining us for just a couple of more minutes here quickly on Badgers in 60, the debut edition. Matt, they, just as Nick said there, this idea of a younger coach, I feel like there was, where they going to go? And you talked about it on your show plenty after they decided to go away from Joe Barry and the Wink Martindale and it's kind of the guys maybe in that realm who have done it a really long time compared to guys who are building up in the ranks. But Matt LaFleur goes with a guy who's around the same age and was under Robert Saleh as well. So he has that connection. Is this a trend that you're seeing more in the NFL, the idea of going younger and maybe to relate more to these players?
Yeah, it's certainly possible. Joe Barry was kind of a different hire than that. He kind of a guy who had been there, done that as a defensive coordinator. Jeff Hafley obviously hasn't been an NFL defensive coordinator. He's 44 years old, I believe. And we kind of saw that as a theme with some of these interviews. Zach Orr, Denard Wilson, Bobby Babich, Christian Parker, who was the other one? Adam Dirty, the defensive line coach from the Cowboys, kind of up-and-coming names in the business. And Brandon Staley, obviously kind of different, although he's still on the younger side. So it did seem that Matt LaFleur, although we don't know everyone who he interviewed, kind of had a set demographic, if you will, of guys he wanted to interview rather than maybe, a Ron Rivera or a Jack Del Rio or a Rex Ryan, guys who are up there in age and have been there, done that.
Matt, I'm looking through on Twitter here and just kind of finding some more comments from Jeff Hafley. And it seems like he's a big believer in press man coverage with his defensive backs. And any of us who have watched any sort of Packers football and Joe Barry's defense the last couple of years, a lot of complaints about soft coverage, especially on third and short, fourth and short situations like that. But Hafley here seems to be a big believer in press man coverage. And maybe that's something that, do you think that's something that Matt LaFleur focused on, saying, hey, we're playing too soft in our defensive backs on these short situations, short yardage situations, and wants to get a guy who will play press man coverage?
That was such a popular kind of, narrative around the Joe Barry defense. I'm not sure exactly how Matt LaFleur felt about that, on a wide-ranging scale. We know on, a couple individual bases, I don't think that's a word, but, the Giants game or the Buccaneers game, Matt LaFleur called out some of Joe Barry's scheme publicly, at least, which was kind of the first time I remember hearing him do that. It probably happened more, but yeah, I think, the strength of some of these guys, Jair Alexander specifically, is getting up in guys' faces, pressing them, being aggressive. So certainly there are times to do both. There are times to sit back. There are times to get up there and really press a guy. And, we heard so often the word aggressive be used. Now, it's really a cliche word, and, aggressive can, be attributed to playing zone too, being aggressive in zone. But I'll be interested to see how much man they play, how much zone they play, and if there is, like I said, kind of a fundamental change with what you said, seems to be kind of a different ideology coming into Green Bay on the defensive side of the ball.
Matt, my question for you is a quick one. There are going to be people that come out right away and say that they don't like this hire, and they may never like this guy. How much time does he deserve before people start getting on his back?
More than the 20 minutes since this news.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see how much of an influence he has on, maybe some of the guys they bring in. And when I say bring in, I mean, how many guys are going to be returning starters on this defense? Kenny Clark, let's say Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary. So the whole defensive front in terms of the defensive line and the edge rushers, and probably Quay Walker, Jair Alexander. And that's it among the back, 7 that are really penciled in stone. So how much influence is he going to have? Is it going to be something where, he specializes in DBs, or, is he going to retain some of his assistants? That's what I'm interested in finding out is the identity of this defense going to remain because Jeff Hafley is going to keep the position coaches, or is he going to, totally clean house of, the Jerry Montgomerys, the Kirk Olivadatis, the Greg Williamses? That's probably up to him. So it's going to be fascinating to see kind of the identity he brings to this Green Bay Packers defense, because look, the offense gave a lot of reason for optimism this year. If they can get the defense right, they could launch themselves into Super Bowl contention sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that's for sure. And obviously, all Packer fans hoping for that. A new defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley from Boston College, their head coach, comes to Green Bay. Matt, really appreciate you jumping on so quickly. And I'm sure we'll talk to you on our daily shows over the next couple of days.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt. That is Matt Schneidman. You heard him every night of the football season here on weekdays 6 to 7. And now it is Badgers in 60. Of course, we have rotating shows. One of the shows, Badgers in 60. It's the debut Badgers in 60, including a little Packers talk to start.
Yeah, I got to start off with a little Packers, a little breaking news. Right,
that's okay. We'll take it, right? It seems to follow me. I spend my days on the breaking news show, the Mike Heller show. So I'm sorry for everyone out there that was looking forward to the Badgers content we're about to bring you. It's coming now. But we had a little bit of breaking news.
Now,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
yeah.
Right
we
now.
need one of those transitions that Nick uses on the cheese bites, like the. Whoosh. So
Yeah,
boom,
that's
there we
true.
go.
Let me see. I can do it.
You got
I can do
dial-
it. Just give me a
Oh.
moment.
Oh,
Got to find the right mouse.
then we
give
can
me
be
a moment.
officially
there are
Badgers.
Too many mouses in this
Mike.
joint,
Yeah,
but here we go.
there it is.
Time to talk Badgers. In about 8 minutes, we're going to be joined by Paul Brown, legendary Hall of Fame broadcaster who's coming back to call Wisconsin women's hockey. We'll be joined by him in about 7 minutes to talk about his return to the mic and more. First, though, guys, we got to start with the Badger basketball team. And you guys have been hosting the post-game show throughout this entire season. They come in as the 6th-ranked team this week, and they've got Nebraska on the road tomorrow night and a huge tilt against number 2 Purdue on Sunday. And I'll just ask this. Dave, you and me did the show last year, and it was it just seems like a completely different team. It seems like a team, especially the offensive side. Like, that is when it's been so impressive to me, is the way this team has been able to score night in, night out so consistently. What has led to that, the difference between last year, and now this year?
It's the depth of options, and it starts with the addition of AJ Storr. I mean, just what he's been able to do, 28 points in the game against Michigan State. He's averaging almost 16 points a game. It's the type of scoring that Wisconsin didn't have last year. Last year, the scoring was really trying to run through Chucky Hepburn, and Chucky Hepburn was trying to do so many different things, and he just was not able to be that consistent scoring presence for that team. But now you have AJ Storr that comes in, and he's a consistent scoring presence. He takes a whole bunch of shots. He normally leads the Badgers in shot attempts every single game. You got John Blackwell coming in off the bench. You got Nolan Winter providing depth off the bench. Max Klesmet really taking a step forward offensively also has helped out this team. But that's really where it kind of starts. It starts with AJ Storr. Chucky Hepburn no longer has to be that guy with the scoring. He can facilitate. That's been his role all season, as a facilitator, as the floor general, as the point guard. And it's not on him to take all those shots. And it just leads to so many different weapons that they can go to, whether it's Storr, whether it's Klesmet. Tyler Wall has had a really great season. Stephen Crowell has continued to get better. So just adding that depth, having that depth with Storr, plus you still have a Sejan, you're returning 92% of your scoring from last year. It's a much deeper team. And it started when they brought in AJ Storr.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, this is a team that runs through Chucky Hepburn, but in every aspect but offensive output. This is what Greg Gard said about Hepburn this week. I got it here. It's just a great point that needs to be made about their star point guard, in my opinion.
He's always in control. He's doing the right thing at the right time. He doesn't go too fast. He doesn't go too slow. He's your consummate point guard that just makes sure other guys get the ball in the right spots and is very unselfish. And he's never been selfish, but he's taken it to a whole new level in terms of how he can modify his game to really allow others to flourish.
And he wasn't on the finalist list for the best guard in the country, but he has been the cog that makes this offense work. He finds his offensive teammates in perfect position, right? He will drive, he'll kick, and that's the difference this year. Last year, a lot of shots on his shoulders that he felt like he needed to take to make for this team to win. And this year, you just see, well, Max Klesmit's open, or I can get AJ open, or geez, I can dump it down to Big Steve, and he's making it work that way. And the Badgers are clicking on all cylinders. I have to give immense credit to him.
Yeah, and it's kind of like what we've been saying for the last year about Max Klesmit, where the stuff that he doesn't really show up in the box score. Like last year, we were saying that about Klesmit with his defense, the energy that he brought. It's like, well, he had a good game. We only saw a couple of points. It's not really showing up in the box score, but Klesmit played well. And now that's what we're saying about Chucky Hepburn. Not getting a ton of points each game, but what he does is so important to this team, and it doesn't show up in the box score.
Yeah, and it's impressive what the entire team has done this year. As we've mentioned, number 6, we'll get into some more numbers later. Stephen Krall having an impressive year again. And so we'll get into all of that coming up just a little later. Next, though, we're going to talk to Paul Brown. He is coming back to call Wisconsin women's hockey, and looking forward to this conversation. Why he's coming back to the mic, obviously coming in, going to call a fantastic team, and the women's hockey team having a great year so far. So we've got that coming up next. We'll get back into the basketball talk some men's hockey a little later too. It's a brand new show here on The Game. It's Badgers in 60. He's David Gasper, Nick Bruesewitz there. I'm Hunter Baumgardt. This is Badgers in 60 on The Game.
Jump around.
A 1-0 game. Trying to chase it down. Lindmark. There's shot to goal. A beautiful goal scored by Bantle, his 5th of the year. And Wisconsin leads it 2-0 here early in the first period.
Welcome back to Badgers in 60. As you just heard Paul Brown call a goal from one of the games that he called earlier this season when he came in and filled in against Penn State December 8th and 9th, came back, called a couple of games there. Now he's back, going to be calling women's hockey. I'm Hunter along with Nick and David. It's Badgers in 60 on the game, and we're really excited to welcome now to the program. It is Paul Brown, the legendary Hall of Fame broadcaster. And Paul, thanks so much for making a couple minutes for us tonight. We're excited for your return as you are going to be calling women's hockey for the rest of the season for the Badgers. How excited are you to get back on the call consistently here?
Quite frankly, I'm very excited. It's given me an opportunity to get back at what is my passion, and I believe that's play-by-play. I had done the Badger on the men's side with radio and TV for 41 years and had to retire because of my wife having Alzheimer's. And Brian Posick, the guy that does the Badgers now, asked me to come back against Penn State because it would have been my 50th year of doing Badger hockey.
Amazing.
And I did one game, and honestly, guys, if you're in this business, you understand. And all of a sudden, it's like a light went off, and I thought I really enjoyed myself, and I guess I proved I could still do it. It takes me a little longer to memorize the numbers than it did years ago. And we're using the opportunity primarily. I'm going to come back on a short-term basis, finish out this year and do next year. Radio hockey for women and the program. Here's a program that's won 7 national championships. They don't even have full-time radio. And with Tim Scott and the group at iHeart, they're making the commitment. So we're going to get it established, hopefully get it sold, put it in a position where it'll be successful next year. We're going to run a special campaign on Alzheimer's on behalf of my wife and that kind of thing, and then we'll turn it over to a younger guy after that. But it's fun for me, honestly.
Yeah, and Paul, I mean, obviously you've seen a lot of great Badgers hockey teams over the years, and now coming into this women's team who's ranked second in the nation, and obviously have won 7 national championships. How exciting is it for you to come in here and be broadcasting, not just, getting back and calling games and calling hockey games, but calling one of the best teams in the country?
Yeah, you're right. They are 22-4 and ranked number 2. They got a 9-game winning streak. They had a 12-game winning streak earlier in the year. And they're a very fun team to watch. They're very explosive. They have 5 players that have scored more than 30 points. And according to Mark Johnson, they have a young lady named Caroline Harvey, a defenseman, who has 24 points and has missed 9 games already this year. She may be the premier athlete in terms of talent, according to Mark, ever to come out of Wisconsin women's hockey. And if you guys were to go to a game and you didn't know about her name, for an example, and you watched her play for 5 minutes, you go, oh, yeah, that's the one they're talking about right there. She is absolutely phenomenal and has a great deal of ability.
Yeah, Paul, in this group, they gave you a fun one to check out this past weekend on Saturday. They were down 4-1, and they came all the way back to beat Minnesota Duluth 5-4. What was your takeaway from that contest? And they'll have an opportunity to reach double digits on their win streak when they host St. Cloud State this weekend.
Yeah, and it's the first time in their history they were down by 3 goals in that game. And the first time in the history of the program where they came back from 3 down in the 3rd period to win. And according to Mark, it's given the team a lot of confidence. The big thing he's struggling with, guys, right now is they've had a lot of injuries, and they're very shorthanded. In fact, they're normally only playing 3 lines. They've got some question marks going into the weekend about availability of players and that kind of thing. And that's the big challenge that Mark and the staff are facing. Because from here on out now, they got a great run. St. Cloud's in town. They're ranked in the top 10. Then they go up to Bemidji. But then they come home, and 2 consecutive weeks in a row, they play Ohio State, who's ranked number 1, and the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And depending on how they do in this stretch series, will go a long way in determining if they win the league, where they're going to be in the playoffs, etc.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Legendary broadcaster Paul Brown joining us here on Badgers in 60 on the game. And Paul, you've, as David mentioned there a couple of minutes ago, you've seen a lot of great hockey over the years. Where the men's play-by-play man for over 40 years. When you look at this team, what do you think makes this team great? You know, a team that's 22-4 and doing so well.
They have a good group of skaters that are very quick. They are very explosive. They're very deep when they're at full strength. They can rotate 4 lines. Defensively, they're very solid. And one of the things that this club has is they have very solid goaltending. In fact, in the 24 games, they have split on every weekend, and both goalies are playing very, very well. So they have all of the ingredients to go a long way in the tournament. And that depth and the defensive experience and the goaltending have been key parts of the success that they've had this year.
Yeah, Paul, I wanted to ask you about that goaltender split. I mean, Ava McNaughton, Jane Gervais, I mean, they've split it pretty much right down the middle. Both have allowed 20 goals. Both have the same amount of starts. They both have an 11-2 record. It's pretty much split right down the middle between these two with the playing time and everything. In all your years of calling hockey, how rare is it to see a team have pretty much a straight split like this with their goaltenders?
It's pretty rare, quite frankly, and I was trying to think about the last time where that's happened consistently here in Wisconsin, and to be honest with you, I'd have to go back and research it. And when I talked to Mark about this yesterday as we get ready for the broadcast this weekend, I asked him about that. Are you going to continue the rotation? And he looked at me and he kind of said, well, it's working very, very well now. But the bottom line is when you watch teams play and as they get closer to the end of the season and go on to play in the playoffs and hopefully in the national tournament and that kind of thing, normally it's one goaltender. You hear that all the time, that the goalie is the one that's going to take you through in the playoffs and going on to that championship. And I wouldn't be surprised if they continue the rotation, but it'll be interesting to see if one of those two steps up as we go down the stretch here and take over, and then you go with the hot goaltender.
Paul, if you could take a second and speak to your relationship with Mark Johnson. If there's a legend in this industry, it's you. If there's another one, of course, it's Mark Johnson. 600 wins as a head coach here. He played here. He coached with the men's team. What do you make of this guy? How special has he been?
He's absolutely special, and I was kidding him yesterday a little bit. He needs 17 wins. And then if you take what his dad won, Bob won 367 games. Think about it for a minute. Bob Johnson and his son, Mark Johnson, would have coached 1,000 victories for Wisconsin hockey and won 10 national championships.
Wow.
Mark is a very humble guy. And when you read his bio, it's about a half a page about all of the accomplishments he's had, and he's in 2 Hall of Fames. And Herbie Brooks told me one time, and he said it publicly in 1980 when they won the gold medal, he said, we would not have won that gold medal without Mark Johnson. He was our most valuable player. And everybody around here is wondering how long he's going to continue to coach. I mean, he doesn't have anything to prove to anybody anymore. And he's in his mid-60s, and I thought he might think about it after winning the tournament last year, but he wants to keep going, and it'll be interesting to see when he decides to finally hang it up. But that Johnson family and Mark have left a legacy that probably will never be repeated in any sport or hockey in particular.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, super special. Paul, final question for you is this. You mentioned how you're going to combine the Alzheimer's campaign with this, and obviously how important that is to you. Tell us a little bit about that component of coming back to the microphone.
Well, and that was one of the key ingredients is why I really considered coming back, because Jeff Jurgella and Jeff Tyler, who are obviously management and salespeople at iHeart, and we started talking about the possibility and why do this. And they mentioned that it'd be nice if we could do some kind of fundraising campaign and educational campaign. And that really that's where the light went on for me. And if I can do anything in terms of getting the program to consistently come back, and at the same time, Alzheimer's is a disease that hopefully nobody listening to this will ever have to deal with. And my wife and I had a great career going. We were both working. We were living our lives. You don't pay any attention to it. I'm not saying that as a negative. It's just the reality of what it is. But it changes your life the day when you get that diagnosis. And I had no idea what to do, where to go to get the information, how I was going to react to it and that kind of thing. And it's the fourth leading cause of death in the United States, and it's projected that 15 million people may have it by 2050. And to give you a perspective of Wisconsin alone, if that have officially been diagnosed, would fill Lambeau Field in Green Bay and American Family Field where you guys are. Those two stadiums would be full of people that have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I can tell you, going through it emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, it can be devastating of what happens to a family in that situation. And I've had some contacts with the Alzheimer's and Dementia Research Center at the UW. And when that opportunity came up, we went to the Initiative to End Alzheimer's. And what we're hoping to do, I'll make this short, is put together an educational campaign that we can run next year in the hockey broadcast. And there's two reasons for that. To use it as an education process. More women than men have Alzheimer's. So they're using it as a vehicle to just try to educate and help the people in the public understand and hopefully at least be aware of it and pay a little attention to it. And hopefully a campaign with UW women's volleyball and Badger women's hockey and get that running for next year. And then at the same time, maybe they can find or get established a younger guy to come back in and take over the play-by-play the following year. So that's the plan.
There you go. It sounds like a wonderful plan. And Paul, it's an absolute pleasure for us to have you on the show tonight. Thank you so much for a couple of minutes. We cannot wait to hear you back on the call Friday night.
All the best to you guys. Thanks for calling.
Absolutely. That is legendary Hall of Fame broadcaster Paul Brown joining us here. He'll be joined, of course, by Mark Greenhall on the call for the remaining women's hockey broadcast for the season, and that'll be starting Friday night and Saturday as well. And just absolutely a legend, you guys.
Saturday and Sunday.
Sorry,
but yeah, you're spot on.
Yep.
Yeah.
Men on Friday, Saturday.
Trying to get their fix of Paul Brown.
Yes.
They get everything ready to go. They got their snacks. They're ready to tune in, and they realize it's on Saturday. So, Hunter, I can't fault you for that. We're all excited to hear him do it. So I get it. Just one more day, everybody. Wait till Saturday afternoon at 3 at the LeBron Arena. The Badgers will host St. Cloud State, a team they beat both times they faced them on the road earlier this year.
Yeah, absolutely. They're 22-4 on the season, as we mentioned. Just a fantastic start. Yeah, it's right in front of me. It does say February 3rd and 4th, and I just the math just didn't add up for me for some reason. I don't know
what day of the week is it. Who knows?
Yeah, right. No, it is. That was a great to talk to Paul. Coming up next, we'll get into some men's hockey. Also, get back to the Badgers basketball conversation because they are number 6 in the country. Big tilt against Nebraska, and then an even bigger tilt on Sunday against Purdue. So. We'll be right back. When we come back, we'll talk about those couple of sports. It's the debut edition of Badgers in 60. There's David Gasper and Nick Bruesewitz. I'm Hunter Baumgardt on The Game.
I won't ever slack up, hunky better back up. Try and play the role and you're the whole crew will act up. Get up, stand up, come on, throw your hands up if you got the feeling.
Welcome back to the debut edition of Badgers in 60 on the game. 97.3 in Milwaukee, 1070 in Madison. Of course, worldwide on the iHeartRadio app. You can also follow both stations on Instagram. Yes, both stations are on Instagram. Make sure and go check that out. Of course, 97.3 the game is the Milwaukee handle, and the game Madison is the Instagram handle for Madison. So go check. Got some behind the scenes pictures and videos there, coverage of all your favorite teams. So definitely Instagram is the place to be when it comes to all of our teams and the teams that you love. And there's David Gasper and Nick Bruesewitz. I'm Hunter Baumgardt. Now we're gonna get into hockey probably in just a little while, but wanted to revisit that conversation we were talking about the men's basketball team, because they're ranked 6th in the country. That's the highest AP Top 25 ranking since they were number 6 on December 28th, 2020. And this team coming off a season in which scoring was tough for this team last year. I was looking at the numbers, guys. Last year, field goal percentage was at 41%. This year, it's at 47%. And then you look at their points per game, 65 last year, 76 this year. I mean, that's an 11-point difference. That's a big difference.
Yeah, and it's been noticeable really from the get-go here. I mean, that first game against Arkansas State where they put up 105, it's just been a completely different team. And I think we saw Hunter and I, we were talking about this last year during the NIT and their run there, and the things that they could learn, how it was a great experience for them, the things we saw from Stephen Crowell and several other players. Just that there's so much that they could take away from that year. And now they seem to have taken that and carried it over into this season. And it's been incredible to watch them be able to pull away. There have been so many games this year, Nick, where we've just been sitting there. It's like, okay, this game's kind of close. Wisconsin gets out to a big lead early. The other team's able to come back, but Wisconsin is able to pull away. They're able to use their lessons from last year and pull away, and they're able to hit shots and avoid those scoring droughts, because the scoring droughts were the problem last year, where they would go on 5, 6, 7-minute droughts without a point. And this year, that's been almost completely eliminated.
And the best part about it is, even if they do go on a scoring drought, you've highlighted the fact that they've been able to get out to hot starts. So they're able to kind of handle these droughts that come naturally in everybody's game, every team's game. Wisconsin started this year 1-2, right? They fell to Tennessee at home, and then they lost to Providence in the worst game of the year. Since then, they're 15-2, right? That is a great run for a group that doesn't get to play too many gimmies. Right. They had that stretch that we called the gauntlet, right, where they were taking on tough teams. They hosted Marquette. They beat them. We stormed the court after that. The Badgers fans did. I was filming it for media,
totally not enjoying it at all.
Professional journalism reasons.
Investigative journalism, really. Is what they call it.
Absolutely.
And then they went to East Lansing and they took down Michigan State. And then they finished that tough trip on the road at Arizona and lost that one against the number 1 ranked team in the nation. But the Badgers have been dominant, and it hasn't been one player. We've seen this team become one of the best in the country. Just 2 years ago, they were right in the same position, 6th ranked in December of 2020. But they had Johnny Davis, and they had a bunch of guys after. This is a group that starts with A.J. Storr, but on a nightly basis, it's Max Klesmit. It's Stephen Crowell. It's Tyler Wall. It's Chucky Hepburn with 8 assists. It's Connor Essegian playing 3 minutes, getting 6 points. It's contributions across the board, a really deep team. We talk about it a lot. They returned 90+% of their scoring from last year. Plus, those guys got better. Plus, they got A.J. Storr. Plus, they've gotten great production out of 2 freshmen this year. John Blackwell, the guard from Michigan, outstanding. And Nolan Winter, that second big man behind Stephen Crowell. Minnesota guy, once again, big man for Wisconsin stepping up.
Well, and you talk about Stephen Crowell and you look at where he ranks on the team. I mean, he's 2nd in points per game. He leads the team in rebounds, 2nd on the team in assists, leads the team in field goal percentage, leads the team in 3-point field goal percentage as well. Like the big man getting it done from beyond the arc. So like that, as much as, A.J. Storr has stole a lot of spotlight and the flashy dunks and things, Stephen Crowell has been consistent this season.
Yeah, he's approaching something pretty cool. I know Dave loves to do the fun facts on our post-game show.
We
got
fun
some
facts.
Intriguing stats if we're not going to steal that same name for this program.
Yeah, I mean, he's coming in. I mean, he's approaching Frank Kaminsky's records for assists by a 7-footer. since 2002. Frank Kaminsky, 188 assists in his career. Steven Kral's at 187. So he's going to be passing that pretty soon. He nearly had a triple-double the other night. 12 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists as well. So he's just continuing to not only just be the big guy in the paint, because Wisconsin, the whole offense, you got to get touches in the paint. That's really the bread and butter for this team. And he's down there, but he's also looking to pass. He's also looking for the open guy and trying to get them shots. He's drawing the double team over. He's waiting for him. Double team comes. Somebody's wide open, passes it to him, open shot, money. That's just what it's been for him. It's just been an incredible run of success. And he's also approaching 1,000 career points. That's going to be coming up for him soon as well. So it's just been a great run for Kral this season, who has just consistently gotten better every single year in this program.
What's Patton Walkershaw's nickname for him?
The USS Kral, our aircraft carrier.
And he's been an immovable object down low for Wisconsin. He's been as consistent as it gets, and he has that passing touch that's not common to big men. And you said it, he's about to pass Frank Kaminsky, not only in the Badgers record book or in that time frame since 2002, but it's in the Big Ten in general for 7-footers. He's about to pass Kaminsky as the most assists in that category, that height range, out of anyone in the Big Ten. It's not just Wisconsin. What makes it even more impressive to me is that he does it really without much flash and awe in his game. Don't get me wrong. When Steve gets angry, he gets angry. He'll get in someone's face if he needs to. But Greg Gard said last year before they took on Bradley, after they took on Bradley, it was more about lighting a fire under him. And he went off for 30-plus points. He nailed a bunch of three-pointers in that game in the NIT. That one was at the Kohl Center. But Big Steve's got the fire. It's lit underneath him. There's no doubt about it this year. And he's played so well that we don't have to talk about him much, right?
Yeah.
It was all about, can he mature into being the next big man for Wisconsin, the next legendary Wisconsin big man? He has. And is he going to be the next Minnesota guy that steps up big time for the Badgers, right? They have been recruiting well. I believe he's from Lakeville. Otherwise, Tyler Wall is from Lakeville in
Eden,
Minnesota.
He's from Eden, Minnesota.
So, wherever you're from. If you're from Minnesota.
Somewhere around there.
And you're a big man.
Probably by a
looking
lake.
to mature.
Yeah.
Give Greg Gard a look, right? Give this program a look.
Oh, Greg Gard will be there. Absolutely. He'll be there.
And Joe Grabanoff and all the assistant coaches and the teammates, they all deserve credit. But the scariest thing about Steven Kral is that he's already, I know it was just word of mouth, but he committed that he's going to come back again next year. And Max Klesmit. So watch out.
Yeah, and he's continuing to get stronger too. And that's been kind of the big thing for him, adding weight, adding strength down there in the paint, because especially as we saw early in his career, he was getting pushed around in the paint a little bit more than you'd like to see a 7-footer get pushed around. But he has added on that weight. He's at 250 plus pounds now, very strong down there in the paint, and that strength is leading him to make some of these plays that we didn't see him make a year or two ago, because he's just gotten stronger when he's facing other big men, other guys that can match up to him. There's some teams where, they're tallest guys, 6'9" out there, 6'8", 6'9" that they're playing. And Steven Kral easily has the mismatch on that. But even when he doesn't have the mismatch, when you got another big guy, and we'll see coming up on Sunday how he faces off against Zach Edey.
Yeah.
That's going to be a really big test for him. But we've seen him make those plays and finish them, whereas before he didn't have the strength to finish and play through that contact.
And if you want to get in touch with us, 414-799-1973, still have about 7 to 10 minutes or so to get your texts and calls in here. One of the Big Ten Network analysts, and you'll have to remind me who it was. I think, Nick, you even played it on.
Yeah, it was Raphael Davis.
Okay.
He said he thinks the Badgers, right, going to be a Final Four team potentially.
Yeah, well, and
could be
said
better
he
than
might
the Decker-Kaminsky squad.
Might be better than the Decker-Kaminsky squad, and that is a high bar to try and achieve. Where do you guys think it stacks up with that?
I mean, I think they definitely could be there. They have the depth of options. It's not the star power of the Kaminsky and Decker. But I mean, that team also had a couple of other options. They had Bronson Koenig. They had a really good group, just top to bottom. So they have the options to be there. It's not like they're riding on one guy. Like when Johnny Davis was leading the team a couple of years ago, it was mostly really what Johnny Davis was doing. If he took over the game, the Badgers were going to win. If he didn't, it was going to be a struggle. So I think they've got the ability. They're already up to number 6, and North Carolina at number 3, they lost the other day. Tennessee at 5, they lost. So when we get to the next rankings, if Wisconsin can get through this week, if they can get through a road win at Nebraska coming up tomorrow, and if they can get a home win here against Purdue, I mean, we could be looking at a top 3 team in the country in the next AP poll.
Yeah, if they knock off Purdue, it's
a big if, but that's what this week could lead to.
Absolutely. And to continue down that road of looking back at that era, right? The 2 years where they went to the Final Four back to back. If we're talking about the collective group, there were guys, right? Gasser, Showalter, Brust, right? These guys that were Duke that are filling these roles that aren't necessarily having massive impacts when it comes to scoring. They just do what they need to do. And Greg Gard has said all along that this group is in a position now where they don't care about individual stats. They care about this group winning. And Connor Essegian's a perfect example of that. That guy went from being a star off the bench last year to being a starter replacing Jordan Davis in the rotation to being their leading scorer more often than not down the stretch. This year, he struggles to find the court, and he's stuck around. And all that Coach Gard has said is that Connor has accepted his role. He's happy as can be. He's satisfied because the team's winning, and he's a team player. And that's what this group needs to collectively understand, needs to collectively embrace if they're going to make the run to the Final Four. And last but not least, it's all about matchups in the tournament. Right now, the Badgers seem to be in a position where they can handle any sort of matchup. I would be concerned if they faced really good guard play back to back to back, because we saw Penn State take advantage of their defensive effort against their guards, really taking it to the Badgers down the stretch in that one, their last loss on the road.
And in that game also, Max Klesmit got into foul trouble early on. He got 2 fouls early, and he was limited to just 15 minutes in that game, ended up fouling out. And I think that definitely played a role. But even before that, even without that, it was definitely going to be a struggle facing 2 very strong guards. So that is the potential weakness on this team. And when you get into March, obviously we still have a month to go until we get there. But this team has the options scoring wise, and they just continue to try to improve defensively. They've got the options offensively that they can make a whole lot of noise when it comes to March. Can they make the Final Four? It's March Madness. I mean, who knows? They could not. There's no predicting it. We all try. We all make our brackets. We all fail miserably, and they're always awful.
They've given us
enough
but they've given us.
There's reason to believe. Absolutely.
There is.
Believe.
Absolutely. And we wanted to mention hockey in just a moment here before we get out. But I just wanted to get this stat in because Brandon Harrison of the UW put this out. So North Carolina lost to Georgia Tech last night, as you mentioned, David. And AP top 10 teams are now have a winning percentage of about 46% on the road this season. And that's against unranked teams. Okay. So Georgia Tech was unranked there. You compare that to other years, like last year, top 10 teams on the road against unranked teams won 75% of their games. This year, 46%. We thought there was parity last year. It's parity this year. It's just so that game at Nebraska, 6:30 pregame, 7:30 tip off on WIBA in Madison and 97.3 the game in Milwaukee tomorrow night. That is a test. It's on the road in Nebraska.
Yeah, and Nebraska's tough. They played them tough earlier on in the season. Wisconsin ended up pulling away for a 16-point victory, but Nebraska does have some weapons as well, so that's not going to be an easy game. And there's just been so much chaos in college basketball this year with top teams losing. There really doesn't seem to be a runaway top team in the country, and it's just been wild.
Yep.
But as Brian Butch always tells us, college basketball, it always delivers. It always does. Always delivers.
And Nebraska has one loss at home. They haven't lost in conference at home this year. And who better to hear from about that than head coach Greg Gard?
Other than Creighton going in there in November, early December, whenever they played, nobody else is, and most teams haven't even come close. So, and the momentum they create from shooting threes. I think they shoot a ton of them. I don't know if they lead the league in 3-point attempts, but my guess is they're up there. So they play well at home and they get tremendous support.
So they're going to get a great amount of support. Nebraska, well, they tend to love their college sports teams because We like to joke they don't have anything else to do around there. But overall, hey, Keisei Tominaga, that's a guy you got to stop from getting hot. He's a 3-point knockdown shooter. So I believe the Badgers have it in them to get the win, but we'll have to see on Thursday night.
We will, absolutely. Also, the men's hockey team ranked number 4 in the country. Hard to forget about them as well.
Yeah.
They are
Great
hosting
team.
Yeah.
huge weekend for them this weekend, hosting Minnesota, number 9 in the country, 7 o'clock Friday and Saturday. And so that has been, they beat Michigan in overtime 6-5. We heard that goal earlier in the program in the open. But guys, it was a fantastic debut of Badgers in 60.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah.
Might have a slip of tongue there, but we'll move on from it when I was referencing some of the players on that 2014 or 15 roster. I got
hey, there you go. You kept going. It's just, you fought.
Dave had a little giggle.
All right, all right. Well, he's David Gasper, Nick Bruesewitz. I'm Hunter Baumgardt. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back again next week for Badgers in 60 on the game in Madison and the game in Milwaukee. Have a good night.